Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, How to Accelerate Lead Quality and Conversions with Content Marketing Optimization. Special thanks to Slingshot SEO for sponsoring the webinar and for giving us some insights into how marketers can plan, manage, and execute effective SEO campaigns, which we'll be discussing later in the presentation. My name is Justin Bridigan. I'm with Marketing Sherpa, and we're broadcasting live from our Mech Lab studio here in Jacksonville, Florida. Now I'll be your host to get us started, and I'll be monitoring the questions and polling for us. So today we have 60 minutes, we have tons of content, and we're eager to share it with you. So let me go ahead and introduce our speakers. We have with us Casey Bauer. She is a Senior Research Analyst with Marketing Sherpa. She focuses mainly on search marketing and is the lead author of the 2012 Search Marketing Benchmark Report, and that includes both the SEO and the PPC editions. Now, Casey is also a co-trainer for the Marketing Sherpa B2B Advanced Practices Workshop, and she does speak on the topic of mastering essential lead generation and lifting results. Casey, we're glad to have you with us today.
Thank you, Justin.
And with Casey, we have Jeffrey Rice. He is also a Senior Research Analyst at Marketing Sherpa, and he focuses mainly on email marketing. He is the lead author of the 2012 Marketing Handbook and Benchmark Report. He also teaches about our email strategies with our workshop, and he's a regular contributor as a Marketing Sherpa e-newsletter columnist. Jeff, it's great to have you with us as well.
Hey, thanks, Justin.
No problem. All right, so let's go ahead and get started today. We're going to talk about how you can join the conversation, because what's most important about these Marketing Sherpa webinars is the conversations that we have with you. We enjoy your questions and we want that feedback. So go ahead and join it today by going to Twitter on #SherpaWebinar. You'll notice that on the bottom of the screen there. And you can also give us questions by filling out the question box in the left-hand corner. Now, we'll be monitoring those during the presentation, and we will, just so you know this, be sending all attendees a copy of the presentation following today's broadcast. So for those of you who are kind of new to Marketing Sherpa webinars, we want to tell you a little bit about it. This is a research-based webinar, and our goal here at Marketing Sherpa is to provide you with the most up-to-date research and the best practice tactics that are out there so you can improve your marketing performance. Now, the real question is, how do we do this? Well, we survey thousands of marketers all across the world, and from those survey results, that helps us find what works and what doesn't. And that yields our targeted benchmark guides and handbooks that so many of you use on a daily basis. And we take that knowledge and then we teach marketers how they can apply those best practices on webinars just like this. We also do that through certification training, through our summits, and also like our upcoming optimization summit that we have in Denver. And really this is an entire ongoing cycle, and this fueled by our constant evolving feedback that we get from each one of you. So that's how important your feedback is with us today. Now, let's tell you a little bit more about our library. This is really why Marketing Sherpa stands out. We have one of the largest libraries in case studies in the world when it comes to marketing research. We have the collective wisdom of 48,000 marketers. We've collected nearly 5,000 pages of commentary and insights. And really that equates to about 6,000 charts and data tables. That's tons of information. This is a lot of good information that you can take and you can immediately apply to change your marketing results. So with that, now you have a background of where this webinar is going and where the foundation is. Let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be discussing some of the key findings in content marketing, and this is from research of about 1,500 search marketers. We're going to be following that with 2 case studies that really showcase the examples of content marketing and those optimization tactics, from building traffic, generating leads, and really driving revenue. Now from that, we're going to go over 5 steps that you can individually use to improve your lead quality and conversions through your content marketing optimization. So hopefully this is a lot of good information that each one of you can implement starting today. So with that, Casey, I'll turn the presentation over to you to help us to get started.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Okay, so before we get into some of the key findings, let me just give you a little bit more on the research background. the research comes from the 2012 Search Marketing Benchmark Report that Justin mentioned, the SEO edition. And we had surveyed over 1,500 marketers on a variety of things. A couple of those would be their challenges and goals for search marketing programs, the growing shift to inbound marketing. We really examined this. We asked about how much they were using SEO tactics, which ones they found to be the most effective and the most difficult in terms of time, money, and effort. And finally, and this last point really forms the foundation of today's webinar, the role of content in their SEO programs. So let's look at the first key finding. Now, marketers rated content creation as the most effective, but also the most difficult SEO tactic. Now, this really comes as no surprise. I mean, you can see how it stands apart from the cluster of all those other tactics on the effectiveness and difficulty scales. And in a way it makes sense, because if organizations are going to achieve good organic rankings and ensure that their products and services are found across all formats, all venues, they really need to be strategic with their planning and processes. And part of that is being ever savvy with the creation and optimization of all your digital assets. And content is the really big one, because good content makes for a better search experience and ultimately a better end user experience. Now, the next key finding is that marketers are really using a lot of different content formats when it comes to trying to connect with prospects and customers. Now, as you look at this chart, you can see web pages, up there on the top, big, large sphere size. That means it indicates a high level of usage. And, of course, those are going to be the most common. And they're also effective. I mean, half of all marketers surveyed said that they consider these to be very effective in helping them achieve their marketing objectives. And that makes sense. I mean, our websites, they're the hub of all of our marketing activities. And so when the content on these pages is optimized, all the better. But what's important when you look at this chart is that you need to look beyond web pages in your content marketing optimization efforts and thoughtfully give consideration to other content formats that might help you increase the number of touch points and help you find other ways to connect and resonate with your audience best. So think about casting your net wide, so to speak. But there's a caveat with that, because you still need to have a clear purpose and rationale for doing so, for selecting your content formats, and we're going to cover that in a bit. The last thing, I want to look at one more thing, but before that I want to just bring up this attendee question, and it came in on the registration form. And I want to thank you for those of you that submitted questions, and we're going to try to answer a number of those through the content today, and some we're also reprinting on a few slides. And this question was, can you provide any statistics or results of using content optimization in terms of lead conversion? And we actually have some research that speaks to that point, and this is the last key finding that I want to share today, and that's content does accelerate lead quality and conversions. We saw that content creators, those that purposefully use content creation as an SEO tactic, they're able to convert 28% more organic traffic. So already that's a pretty big deal. Secondly then, the leads that they're getting from organic search, they consider those to be of the highest quality more often than non-content creators. And so that naturally lends itself to the fact that they're able to convert more of those. They produce these higher quality leads, and then those are more likely to convert. So this chart really is sort of the reason for the webinar today. I mean, we know content creation is important in SEO efforts. We know it makes a difference with leads and conversions. And so it brings up this question, how can organizations, how can you here on this call today mindfully approach the creation and optimization of your content products? Now, we're going to spend the rest of this session answering this particular question. And we're going to do it in 5 parts. And I'm calling these the 5 Ps. And, as marketers, we're already familiar with the 5 Ps of marketing. And so this is sort of a play on that. These are the 5 Ps of content marketing: purpose, process, people, presentation, and performance. But before we get into the first one, I want to just lay out a definition for us to consider, just sort of put this out on the table and give us a framework, a mental framework. Content marketing optimization is a term that describes the marriage of content strategy and SEO expertise. So that's a very general definition. But this next part that's in italics is what I really want to emphasize. I'm borrowing this definition and quoting it here because I think it's fantastic. It's comprehensive. I mean, so comprehensive that in and of itself, it almost tells you what you would need to do with your content marketing optimization efforts. And if you'll just indulge me, I want to read it. It says, it's the art of understanding exactly what your prospects and customers need to know, deliberately producing optimized content based on keywords, phrases that are driving organic search traffic and conversions, and then delivering that optimized content to them in a relevant and compelling way to grow your business by socializing the content through your organization's social networks. Now, that is a mouthful, granted, but there's a wealth of valuable ideas in there. So I encourage you just to keep this definition in mind as we work through the 5 Ps. So let's get into our first, which is purpose. Set a goal before you start. You know, ask yourself, why should you create a piece of content? What purpose is it going to serve? And the reason that it's so important to ask these questions first is that you don't want to fall into the trap of thinking that you need to do everything. I mean, we looked at that chart, you know, with all those different content formats. And you think, oh my goodness, you know, we're just doing a few of those, maybe we need to do more. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. And that's why it's important to, you know, not fall into that trap of thinking that way. I mean, a lot of companies take this checklist approach. You know, they think, okay, we've got this product, so we need a white paper, we need a brochure, we better do some case studies, add in some webinars, and it kind of goes on and on. Instead of shooting in the dark with that kind of approach, consider why you should create a piece of content and what purpose it's going to serve. When you focus on aligning your content with your goals, your audience, and your opportunities, that's going to drive your content format and topic choices. Now, an approach for doing that is to target your content to a specific stage in the customer engagement cycle. But before I kind of go into that, I'm just curious to see, you know, who's actually doing this today. So, you know, we here at Marketing Sherpa, we're all about the marketer and finding out, you know, what marketers are doing and not doing. And so this question, you know, it just asks you that. Are you developing content, and for which 5 stages of the customer engagement cycle, awareness, consideration, inquiry, purchase, retention, you know, or all of the above or none of the above, you know, are you developing content? So it's a multiple choice. You can select multiple categories. If you're doing all of the above, select that, none of the above. Now, you may be using different terminology in your organization, but the point of the question is whether you're producing content that meets customers along the entire life cycle. So are you using content to get a potential customer's attention, teach them what you have to offer, turn them into a paying customer, and then keep them as a loyal customer? Okay, so
yeah, it looks like we're starting to get some results, and I wanted to just go ahead and present those to you. Can you see those results on your screen, Casey?
I do. Okay. Yep, I don't see percentages. I see raw numbers. So yeah, this is very, very interesting. It's good to see that the answer with the most responses is all of the above. So that's fantastic. And just a handful say none of the above. In terms of individual categories, it seems like most of the effort is put into the awareness stage. So that's also good. So I'm glad you're here on this webinar today, you know, and I hope you'll get some more ideas on how you can expand your content development across more of those stages. So thank you very much for answering this poll. Okay, so let me, go back just one. So here's how you can target content to stages in your customer engagement cycle. So you notice the stages, and then, you know, on the right side is the content goals. So ask yourself, for our next piece of content, what do we want it to support? And the answer to that question, you know, those goals, that's going to guide some of these content decisions, both your topics and your formats. Now you'll notice that a lot of these goals here in this example, they're very high level, you know, like increase website traffic, raise general awareness, but that's at least a starting point. And you can obviously become much more specific with your content goals. But remember that even setting basic high-level goals gives you, some structure and provides some type of compass to keep you on track when you're planning and publishing your content. So you want to think of your goals, your content goals for each of those stages, but then you can go a little bit further. And this is where I think it becomes even more useful. Because once you pick a goal for your content, you need to pick a topic. And a strategy for doing that is to put yourself in the mind of your ideal prospect. So that's the best person that you could possibly reach. And then list the information that that person is seeking and needs. Then for every single point in the customer engagement cycle, you would consider what questions that person would ask. Now, your content should strive to answer questions along the spectrum from generic to specific. And from a practical standpoint, that means that once you understand the needs of your ideal prospect, you can then work to address the needs of a specific type or a specific segment of prospects. And when you target those specific segments, that's going to add specificity to the questions that you can answer. So just to give you, an example from this here, you can see awareness. How can I find the best deals on footwear? That's pretty generic. That's just, footwear. The second question is much more specific, a much more specific segment. It's not just footwear, but it's women's running shoes. Okay, so our next area is P for process, and I want to kick this off with another question that we got. And it says, I blog for a very small niche and have trouble finding keywords, so I create content based on my experience, 18 years in my field, and what I know will be of use to my readers. I need a more structured approach. How do I go about this? Well, you can go about this by plotting out a process. And the reason a process and a detailed process is so important is that SEO, in light of a content strategy, involves more than just the optimization of web pages with keywords. It's much more involved. It requires structure. And it probably even is more involved and more structured than we have here. But at least what we have here on the slide with these points, these will show you some of the key actions that you want to take. Now, we're going to cover a few of these actions in more detail in some of the subsequent slides, but I'll just quickly walk through these. First, you're going to gauge the content demand by keyword area, and then examine social conversations to define the context of the content demand. Now, context is everything. And here is where social and social conversations really give you a sense of language and attitude. How are people talking about this issue, this need, this problem? Where? Why are they talking about it? Is it that they're looking for information? Is it that they're frustrated? How often are they talking? What kinds of answers are they looking for? What kind of answers seem to satisfy them? So examine those social conversations. Then outline content topics and keywords for which you're optimizing and create content themes by month. Then take an inventory of your content and compare that against your existing content sources. Evaluate the quality of the content and develop a gap closure plan. And you're going to find that you either need to create new or edit existing content. And finally, distribute this optimized content to your social networks and give content consumers every opportunity to socialize it. Now, why is this point so important? Because search engines now factor social signals into their organic search algorithms. And the reason is, social media, social networking, it's all about relationships. Relationships prove relevance. Relevance is at the core and heart of organic search. So there was another question, I apologize, I don't have it verbatim in front of me, but it had something about, best practices, with social, in light of content. And, I'll just name one here that because it's so important to distribute your content, a best practice you could look for would be to build out your social networks because you need to extend your reach so that you can also extend your sharing potential. So one of the first areas we'll look at in a little bit more depth is this one. Gauge the content demand by keyword area. Now, we know that people are using search engines to answer questions, to solve problems. So when you look at search data, you can detect problems that your prospects are trying to solve in your industry and then create content to help them. So how do you do this? Well, use a keyword tool, enter keywords related to your business, and that's going to bring up additional keywords and related search volumes and the level of competition. Now, every market has top-level keywords that generate strong search traffic, and you probably know what those are in your market. And so as a result, there's heavy competition for rankings. Now, trying to achieve really good rankings with those highly competitive keywords can often be an exercise in futility. So a better bet is to focus on areas that have less competition. And doing so might yield greater opportunities. So consider, sidestepping those highly competitive keywords and targeting topics with these three attributes. They're relevant to your prospects' needs, they have somewhat lower search volumes, and significantly less competition for rankings. Next would be to create content themes by month. And you know, I have a sister, and she's a managing editor for a big home cooking blog. And so she's talked to me a lot about this idea. And so I want to sort of share, you know, some of what I've learned from her and you know, from other places. But the first thing is you need to understand the cyclical nature of your market, so you write for their mindset at the time. But that means you're not going to be writing about Christmas cookie recipes in July, or improving your tennis game in January, or beach running in winter. You know, you kind of get the idea. Then assign each theme each month an overall theme. So, you know, let's go back to our running footwear example from earlier. Now, I'm not a runner, so what I may say may not be accurate, but let's say that April, you consider April to be the kickoff for the outdoor running season, at least for like a recreational runner. So maybe your April theme could be start your season off in style, you know, something like that. Then you want to structure your content around 4 questions: what, where, why, and how, and try and answer each one of those every week within your content strategy document. You can also use those 4 questions to come up with other ideas, other angles. Even it's a great way to brainstorm possible titles. So for example, what? What are 5 things you should look for in a running shoe? Why? The importance of stretching before and after you run. Where? A title could be something like where to find the best deals on minimalist footwear. So you kind of get the idea. And you could start with those working titles, but they're a great starting point for your article and for your content piece. And then after you have that, it's simply a case then of making sure that you attribute space for both your main keywords and your long tail variations. So, as we saw earlier, content creation is considered the most difficult tactic. So repurposing is a nice way to get ahead of the curve. And here is an example of how you might structure in a content audit of your existing content for repurposing. So first you want to take an inventory of your existing content, and you're going to look at so many different sources. I mean, websites, blogs, sales collateral, analyst reports, press presentations, executive interviews. I mean, it can go on and on the list. The idea is the more departments that you include in your audit, the more content you're going to be able to uncover. Next to each piece of content, existing content, list the ways you can repurpose it. And by repurposing, we mean updating existing content or modifying it from one format to another to once again make it current and relevant to the target audience. I mean, it's not just giving it a facelift, but it's injecting new life into it. So content repurposing is obviously the best thing. It's a lot easier than original content development, but you're likely going to also need to create original content. And when you go through your content audit, that is really going to expose areas where you're either content-rich or in need of substance. And so with this type of insight, that's going to help you determine where you need to focus for original content development. Now, the great thing about original content development is that it gives you the most control over your content keyword strategy. And when you develop content, original content, based on strategic keywords, that allows prospects and customers to find the information that's most relevant to their needs. Now, we all know that creating original content, it's a very time and resource consuming task. So think about how you can be most efficient with this, how you need to prioritize. And this worksheet may help you in thinking through some of those challenges. Okay, our third area is people. I want to just start off with this thought, that a page that's too optimized can be awkward to read. So in other words, you need to keep that reader in mind. You want to write for people, not search engines. Content creation for SEO works best when you start with an understanding of your audience, their behaviors and their preferences for information discovery, how they like to retrieve it, pull it down, download it, how consume it, share it, all of that. Make it easy for people to find, consume, and share your content by identifying with their needs and then addressing those in your topics and keywords. Next, use their language. Use the customer vernacular. The words that organizations use to describe their products and services, often these differ from what the target audiences use. And one example is cell phones, and I'm using this example because this is something that I understand very well. A number of years ago, I worked for a very large telecommunications division or company, and we had a large wireless division. And internally, we refer to everything wireless plans, wireless data, so on and so forth. But what's interesting is, in the marketplace, according to these keyword tools, even though cell phones are still called wireless phones and mobile phones, when it comes to search volumes, the dominant keyword choice is still cell phone, as you can see here, in that first line. It even becomes, more apparent when you add on the qualifier best. So let's say somebody was looking for best cell phone plans. There are 10 times as many searches done on best cell phone plans than best wireless phone plans. Finally, develop relevant and compelling content. Now, relevance, is this very popular term. It speaks to the likelihood that a given web page or content is going to be interesting or useful to a search engine user for a keyword search. I mean, when it's done well, when you develop relevant content, it's all about creating content that users would want to find, and it's helping search engines deliver great search results. So it's kind of the balance of those two things. Relevant content in the eyes of the consumer, it's going to answer their questions, it's going to deepen their understanding, expand their knowledge. So I mean, it's so valuable to them on so many levels. Now, compelling content, this goes a bit beyond that. This type of content, it's not relevant to just the user at hand, but it's also going to be useful and relevant to the user's social network. They're going to want to share this to help them build relationships. I mean, I guess the way I like to think about this is you just feel compelled to share it. And you know what I'm talking about, right? Like you come across something, maybe it's an infographic, a video, maybe a white paper or some other thought leadership article, and you're like, wow, this is so good. I'm going to tweet about it, or I'm going to share it on LinkedIn, or I want to like it on Facebook or share it on Facebook. You just feel compelled to share it. So that's what we mean by compelling content. So I'm going to turn this over to Jeff now, and we're going to look at our first case study that illustrates how content marketing can impact leads, conversions, and the bottom line.
Hey, thanks, Casey.
Yep.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting case study from McKenna. They're a provider of subscription-based software that helps organizations perform sales compensation planning. Their target market is, thanks for advancing the slide for me. Their target market is organizations with 50 or fewer sales reps. Now, reaching these smaller businesses with traditional outbound marketing, such as email and advertising, it was really difficult and expensive. So instead, McKenna wanted a strategy that helped frustrated sales executives find it on the internet. But since few prospects knew of the software as a service solution that was available, they weren't actively looking for it. So to achieve their goal to become the top destination for advice about sales compensation planning, the marketing team needed a strategy that would attract those web users looking for sales compensation planning information and enter them into their marketing funnel. Once in the funnel, then McKenna could capture their contact information for qualification, move them into a free software trial stage, and eventually convert them into a paying subscriber. So here we're going to show you the 3 steps that they used to manage their content strategy. To attract this traffic, the first step was to create content that helped prospects, and I focused the word on help prospects answer those questions about their sales compensation planning challenges. McKenna created several resources that offered valuable information that wasn't directly promoting the company's software. McKenna created a sample sales compensation plan. This document provided an example of a well-organized plan that clearly laid out goals for a sales team and demonstrated how they would be compensated. They also went ahead and made these educational webinars. So these were online presentations that offered general tips and best practices for sales compensation planning. Other programs focused on a particular industry vertical with their unique sales compensation challenges. These could have been such as software companies moving from a package sale over to a software as a service model. Now, with the content in place, the marketing team optimized their website pages around key terms that the prospects would be using to search for sales compensation planning advice. So using keyword research, they identified broad general terms such as sales compensation planning, sales comp planning, commission sales agreement. They also identified longer tail key terms that reflected more targeted searches on a specific industry vertical. And these included sample of a sales compensation plan, sales compensation planning for SaaS, and auto dealer sales compensation planning. Now with this list of 600 keywords that they identified, then they began optimizing specific pages on their site around 2 or 3 relevant terms per page. Now while optimizing their own site pages, the team also looked for opportunities to add inbound links from highly ranked external sites. These additional links would in turn boost their own site's relevance for search engines. First, they used their marketing optimization and content management platform to analyze inbound links of their major competitors. After identifying links to competitor sites with a high page rank in Google, they sought out these sites from which they could also get a link to their own website. Now, sites they targeted included online directories, information sites about sales compensation planning, and even news sites to target for their press release distribution. Now, Makana succeeded in becoming the top destination for advice about sales compensation planning. The company's website ranks on the first page of Google's search results for key industry terms such as sales compensation plan, sales comp plan, sample commission plan. So overall, this was a terrific, they did a terrific job at building up their content marketing and parlaying it into a successful SEO plan. So I'd like to pass it back to Casey now.
Thank you, Jeff. I mean, I really like that case study because, it does show how Makana had a very clear idea how they wanted to use content in their search efforts. And I think my favorite thing from this case study, or one of my favorite things that really jumped out at me is that quote, here on the end. I love that this marketing director isn't content with the results, but that he wants to do more with content because he sees this potential. And he specifically talks about the potential with verticals. And then he says, the possibilities just go on and on. So I think they have, they've had such a great experience, and they want to keep riding that wave. So it's a good case study. Thank you for sharing it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, the next, we're going to look at the fourth area now, which is presentation. And this really starts to get into your format and your structure. So let me kick it off with this thought, which is conventional wisdom dictates that quality trumps quantity. And while this may hold true in other spheres of life, in SEO you need both. So you do need to focus on both quality and quantity. And the reason for that is that when you consistently publish content that's both frequent and of high quality, that can lead search engines to rank your page and site as an authority on the subject. So how do you kind of keep these things in mind? Well, here's a do and a don't checklist. Now, the quality of the content on your page is one of the most important factors in SEO. So quality writing means content that's not going to only be optimized for keywords, but it's also well-researched, well-written, and well-received. So focus on creating content with those attributes. Also understand that quality articles make your site more trustworthy and authoritative. And those are other factors for attracting more traffic to your page. Search engines need to see fresh content and require regular updates. So be sure that you're doing that. And depending on the size of your site, Adding new content daily could be a rule of thumb, and that could suffice, although the actual frequency of your updates really does depend on your site's purpose. And so whatever your case may be, you want to establish a pattern for content updates, so you're setting expectations and rewarding regular visitors. Now, in terms of the don'ts, don't focus too much on keyword density. I mean, a lot of marketers place so much focus on this aspect, and then they disregard the quality of the writing, and it's awkward, unnatural writing. Now, it is true that search engines rely on keywords to identify website content, but you also need to know and understand, so in other words, don't overlook that they've also become more capable of recognizing valuable quality content over content that's, looks like a rush job, that's really hastily produced. So don't try to outsmart the system. And finally, don't risk looking like you're only after title and heading tags by writing articles that are too short. Now, a rule of thumb that I've heard a lot is, around 300 words. Like I mentioned, doing anything less looks like you're only after, some of those key tags. So you want to make sure your copy is long enough and that you can work those keywords into your copy in a natural way and not in an artificial way. So finally, let's look at structure. Striking the right balance between SEO effectiveness and readability can be tricky, but with the right layout, you can make your content both search engine and reader friendly. So, of course, you want to think of your keywords and how do you place these. Create an attention-grabbing title. I mean, use the keyword in the title. Use in your subheadings, your H2, H3 tags, include relevant keywords. Position your keywords towards the top of the article. The first line, first paragraph of your content. The idea here is you want it above the fold, so it's immediately evident that this is relevant. Introduce synonyms for your keyword phrase, perhaps in the second or third paragraph. This idea here really addresses natural language, natural writing, and also helps you capture keyword and long-tail variations. You want to repeat your keyword phrase throughout the text, but as we mentioned before, don't be so focused on keyword density. And in the spirit of natural writing, don't force this. I mean, that is so key. Matt Cutts, who is the head of Google's web spam team, in talking about keyword density, he said, my recommendation is to either read it aloud, in other words, your content piece, or read it to someone else and have someone else read it and sort of say, do you spot anything that's artificial or stilted or doesn't quite read right? And if you can read through the copy and have it read naturally where a person isn't going to be annoyed by it, and I love that he says that, then you're doing relatively well. So there's always sort of the sanity check here. Make sure that it sounds natural. And finally, use keywords in your links and in the image alt text and captions. Now here is just an example, a visual example of how you might place your keywords. And again, this is an example. This is not a hard and fast recipe for you to follow. But it shows you how keywords could be placed, both in the title and some of the tags, copy, even the URL. So the other element is readability. Now, we have all been on web pages that sort of hit us like a ton of bricks. I mean, you get there, you take a look, and it's like this huge, copy wall. It's an 8-point font and, all of that. Long paragraphs, dense text. And, I don't know about you, but unless I'm, really needing that information or really in an academic mood or something, I typically click off those pages and see if I can find something that's going to answer my question, but be a little bit more easy on the eye and the brain. So keep readability in mind. First those text blocks, break them up, figure out how you can break that text up into categories. Restrict your paragraphs to, say, 5 lines. Use lists, bullets, numbering lists. Search engines and people like lists. Short, clear sentences, lots of white space. Links, figure out how you can naturally insert your links into your copy, especially if you're using keyword phrases. And finally, use and tag your images effectively. And one of the registrants on today's webinar mentioned on the registration form how they're getting plenty of high rankings with their artwork in Google Images search. So, that's a fantastic example of using and tagging images effectively. The last thing I want to cover is choosing your content formats mindfully. And we touched a little bit on this idea in the purpose step. In other words, we were talking about how you want to align content with your goals, your audience, and your opportunities, and then let that drive the design and format you select. But I'm going to go into it a little bit more here. And that is, you don't want to choose these content formats by default or because everyone else is doing it. So in other words, instead of mimicking what's offered in your industry, choose content formats that best suit your needs and best connect with your prospects and customers. So, as an example, you might discover that your white papers really aren't doing it. Your prospects don't have the time, they don't have the inclination to read these 15-page white papers, but maybe their, ebooks are what they like. They're eagerly soaking up ebooks that are rich with graphics, have call-out quotes. If you have dense technical information, again, maybe the white paper will work. Maybe video is better. So, identify the formats that are going to really work with your customers. Then decide on formats and designs that define and give your brand a voice. And this point right here is best illustrated by the next case study that we're going to cover on Eloqua. So let me pass that back over to Jeff, and he'll walk us through that.
Oh, thanks, Casey. Yeah, I do really like this case study for that exact reason. This case study is on Eloqua. It's a marketing automation software company. Now, their challenge was to compete with a real socially savvy rival. The rival was really active in content creation with a very vibrant blog. So to successfully participate in Web 2.0, Eloqua needed to create a totally independent, comprehensive content marketing department that didn't draw any resources from its demand generation or any of its other ongoing marketing programs. Now, this new department had 3 key goals. One was to fill the top of the sales funnel through awareness, completed web forms, and driving traffic to the website. They also wanted to create customer attention and customer satisfaction. They also wanted to create content that was going to improve their SEO. Now, once this decision was made to make content marketing the focus, the challenge was finding a voice for that content. And this is what Casey was leading to. It's so important that you differentiate yourself from the competition. So Eloqua's answer was to create brand identity based on a design voice through highly visual content and social marketing communications. So a big part of this brand identity would be the frequent use of infographics as content marketing pieces. This also meant involving everything from white papers to live presentations so that they had a real heavier touch of design and graphics than a lot of their audience might be expected. The focus on design helped Eloqua's content really get noticed. And more importantly, it promoted sharing of its content. And the SEO value comes from sharing content rather than trying to create keyword-rich content. Sorry, it took me a minute. Now, the traditional white paper is maybe the content marketing piece for B2B firms. Customers expect white papers, and white papers offer a real opportunity for them to provide information about the industry, the company's expertise, and its products. Often, the white paper comes in a fairly predictable package, a lot of text, some graphics, and maybe even a little too much content for today's online readers with really short attention spans. Now, Eloqua tried to take the white paper concept and really inject their creative design into it. Part of this was splintering large white papers into individual, easy-to-read guides. Eloqua came up with what it calls its grande guides. So think of 16 ounces of coffee from Starbucks. The promise was that it takes about 15 minutes to drink that size cup of coffee, and in that same amount of time, a reader can digest the entire guide. The playful design, they playfully designed their brand identity was into all of these guides. The layout itself looked like a well-worn moleskin notebook, and with what appeared to be wet pages or coffee mug rings that someone might have left behind on the page at some point. So they continued on this coffee theme. Now, Eloqua's guides covered a variety of topics, both related to its core business and also broader issues of interest to marketers. In a broader scope, the goal of each guide was to generate and nurture leads. Eloqua would send the guide to its entire database a few days before it was released to the public. Eloqua provided links that gave its early recipients an opportunity to become marketing mavens by being the first to distribute links to the guide. Now, a brand or a corporate journalist is someone you hire to provide content. Now, ideally independent from the marketing department's control. This team member will typically write blog posts, cover industry trends, and write about things that are interesting to the customer. One thing a brand journalist is not is your typical public relations or marketing communications writer. Eloqua decided to hire a corporate journalist who previously covered business sections for the Boston Herald and the Boston Business Journal. They found someone who could speak to that 90% of the market that remained untapped. Eloqua's brand journalists engaged in everything from regular contributing to their blog to interviewing customers on video. The job title of a corporate reporter actually helped them open doors that a public relations manager would find closed. So this is definitely, they made some big investments into their content marketing. Now, it definitely came along with some SEO benefits. So here's some of the benefits that they quickly realized from their content marketing efforts. First, Eloqua's focus on design helped them get their content shared and distributed widely, much more so than if they had created a generic standard white paper. All of this sharing generated a lot of social signals and links, which are key factors in search rankings. They found that focusing on design was a much more effective tactic than producing a white paper that wouldn't be as popular for distribution, even though it might be even more keyword rich. Secondly, links are so important in SEO, and Eloqua was focused on link building. They loaned out their corporate reporter to write on topics that had nothing to do with Eloqua, and they would receive a link from these media outlets, which were authoritative sites. So they were able to pass on more link juice in their corporate bio. Now, the Grande guides also had a larger goal of generating links, and the design, as mentioned, played a big part in that because they were designed to be shared and distributed. So what were the end results for Eloqua? Now, just through 4 Grande guides that they published, the company generated $2.5 million in annual sales contract value. And then, for customers who first downloaded one of these guides. Then, on top of that, another $3.2 million they are in the contract stage from prospects who first downloaded one of these guides. Eloqua's corporate blog reached the ad age 150 within this first year. The most highly desirable lead activity for Eloqua is viewing a product demo. People who discover the Eloqua website through content pieces such as the guides, infographics, and playbooks are 21% more likely to view a demo. And then finally, for one particular infographic, the blog tree, viewers of that content piece were 32% more likely to fill out a form at the website, putting the person into Eloqua's database. So they did a really nice job. I mean, they made a big investment in content marketing, but obviously it's been paying off for them.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Jeff. You know, again, I mean, I think just for me, what always strikes me with this case study is, they kind of took a risk, breaking away from that traditional white paper and kind of going against the traditional way of thinking that you need to have, keyword-rich content. Just focusing on that is the most important thing. And, they focused on, okay, let's create content that actually gets shared. That's going to have, a much larger impact. And, it did. So I think it's a really neat case study. Okay, so let's move into our last point, which is on performance. And the idea here is that the more relevant your content, the better your results. And you're only going to know this by measuring the impact. So measure the appeal of your content. You want to gauge both its popularity and its applicability. I mean, do people like it? Is it relevant? Does it seem to meet their needs? And you can do that, and you can figure that out by looking at a number of metrics. First, look at the conversion rates of your most desirable lead activities. Is it like Eloqua? You know, is it viewing a demo? You know, completing a web form, making a purchase, you know, whatever your most desirable lead activity is, watch and track those conversion rates. And specifically, watch and see if those conversion rates are changing and going up after people have viewed your content, or if they're coming into your site because they viewed your content. Look and track look at the impact and track the impact on search rankings and traffic. And then finally, look at key indicators of subject matter interest, engagement, and relevancy. So you're looking at downloads, at content shares, at comments. And again, think of that Eloqua example. They had great content that was being distributed and shared, and all of those links and all of those social signals definitely were impacting their search rankings and traffic. In fact, you know, many industry experts today in search and many industry people, they really argue that social signals have become the new backlinks. So this is why it is so important to create that contagious content. So in summary, let me just wrap up some of our key points. So here is a table, sort of a summary table of all of these 5 Ps of content marketing optimization, starting with purpose. You know, set a goal before you start and target content to stages in the customer engagement cycle. In other words, set those content goals by stage. Think of the questions your ideal prospect is going to be asking, both those general and the specific ones. That's going to really drive what type of topics you should be covering. Next, in terms of process, you want to plot out a process, gauge the content demand by keyword area, look for those keyword opportunities where the competition is not so fierce, create a content themes by month, and within that plan, you want to consider answering what, where, how, and why. If you can answer each of those questions every week within your content strategy document, you're going to have a great plan to work with. Inventory your existing content and create a gap closure plan. You have to see what you have to work with and then what you need to change and what you need to edit and what you need to actually create from scratch. Next, think of the people. Remember, you're writing for people, not for search engines. You want to make it easy for people to find, consume, and share your content by identifying with their needs and then addressing those in your topics and keywords. So use their language, you know, use the customer vernacular, and then develop both relevant and compelling content. So relevant content meets their needs. Compelling content is content that is so excellent that they want to share it. Presentation. This is about the format and the structure. So you need to focus on both quality and quantity. When you consistently publish content that's both frequent and of high quality, that's what leads search engines to rank your page and cite as an authority on the subject. In terms of how you want to structure it, place your keywords carefully. Don't ignore readability. You know, make sure it's natural. Don't annoy readers, as Matt Cutts has said. And then choose your content formats mindfully, very carefully. You know, look for those formats that are going to best suit your needs and best connect with your prospects and your customers. And remember, you know, figure out how you could perhaps use content to differentiate yourself from the competition like Eloqua did. You know, what is a design, what is a format, what is a feel, an overall design feel that might give your brand a unique voice. And finally, performance. You've got to measure the appeal of your content. So you're looking at the impact on conversions, rankings, traffic, other key indicators of subject matter interest, engagement, and relevancy. So let me see. I think I have time just for one quick question before I pass it back to Justin. And it's this one, you know. How do you identify who would make a good company blogger? And you know, we didn't talk a lot about blogs today, but you know, blogs are a great content generator. You know, a fantastic piece. And so I think this is a really interesting question. And you know, I'm going to give you my opinion on who I think would make a good company blogger. And I don't think just anyone in a company would make the most qualified blogger. And the reason I say that is because if the goal of the blog is to showcase your industry knowledge, then it makes sense that you want to identify subject matter experts. But even within that group, you may need to be selective when you're approaching team members as potential bloggers. Because if someone tends to be really numbers-oriented or visual thinker, they might not adapt well to blogging duties. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it really comes down to being a good writer and putting out a quality product. And like we saw with Eloqua, they wanted to avoid any pitfalls in that area, so they hedged their bets by hiring a corporate journalist. So you really are looking for someone that's a writer. Other traits that you might want to consider when trying to identify potential company bloggers would be someone who's well-informed, really is on top of your industry, and they work to stay informed and aware of future developments. Like we said, someone that's a good communicator, not just in the act of writing itself, but also that ability to communicate. Because remember, you're communicating with people. So if you have comments come in on a blog, and if a post prompts comments, the blogger would know how to turn that into a discussion and how to maybe open it up to even more comments. I would say one last thing I'd throw out there would be to look for someone who has a really unique tone. And admittedly, that's a hard thing to nail down. But if you can find someone that knows how to put their own spin and signature on something that's already been written about, I mean, just imagine what they could do with fresh content. So that probably wraps up my time, Justin. I will now hand it back over to you.
All right, Casey. We do have time maybe for one question, and I can open this up to either yourself or Jeff, but it was kind of an SEO question. Is it good or bad, this is from Laura Mann, to include your company name in every time when you're thinking of SEO stuff, especially title tags? Any recommendations on those?
Well, what's interesting, and this is what I've heard, is that many times people, when they're linking to you, they will also link, they will link to your company name. So if they're linking to, say, a piece of content that's on your website, they're going to many times use your company name. So the company name, obviously carries a lot of value when it comes to linking. We also saw in that one example that when you can, have your keywords within your company name, that can really help you. So, I mean, without a doubt, there is SEO value to having keywords as part of your company name.
Right.
And,
I know from
but I think maybe the other point is you've got to probably break it into two categories. You're always going to have your brand search terms, and so likely your company name is going to be coming up in search results anyway. And so, and those are people that are actively looking for you. And they're going to find you anyway because they know your company name. So that's why it really is part of your strategy. You really do need to kind of, go beyond your company name in terms of keywords. Because you want people to find you based on their needs.
Thank you, Casey. That's great. Well, many of you have asked today how you could really improve your SEO marketing campaigns. And our sponsor today, Slingshot SEO, they help marketers by providing a free SEO analysis. So anyone who really wants to find out how valuable Google thinks their brand is, look at that link below at slingshotseo.com, and you can contact them. And they do have some of the industry's best SEO tacticians, and they have developed an innovative class methodology that they really have that's dedicated toward making sure each of your campaigns are successful. So if you're looking for more analysis when it comes to your SEO, they can give it to you, so make sure you do that. Also, I wanted to mention today to everyone who's on the call that if you're not familiar with our library and research, we are offering a 33% off on anything in our publication library that we currently have, whether it's search, social, content, everything that we have right now between now and the end of April is 33% off, and this is very limited. In fact, in the years I've been here, I've never seen offers like this. So if you are interested in taking advantage of looking at some of the research that we presented today, I'll make sure that you do that by visiting the mechlabs.com/slingshot-SEO100. All right, thank you so much again for all our speakers for presenting today, and also those questions. We couldn't get to all of them. We know there's a lot out there, so we'll address them later through emails, and also we'll be contacting you when we get a chance. So thank you to everyone who attended and also took busy time out of their day. We appreciate everything. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.